for me as well. Once they got George Iloka in, I kind of thought J-Ron Curse was in trouble. But it's interesting to see those two, Curse and Iloka, side by side. They are essentially the same body type, both tall, stringy kind of safeties that I think can affect passing lanes. And the interesting thing to me was once Iloka came in, they've got some interesting defensive sets now where at times they'll have three safeties in the game, and Curse has been up playing the slot receiver in those instances, which is really kind of, to me, it goes against what I would think, because you're usually thinking slot receiver might not be as tall. And here you've got J-Ron Curse at whatever he is, 6'3", 6'4", going against that guy. It looks a little strange, but I think Mike Zimmer, this is the year that he really starts experimenting with a lot of different things on the field, that being one of them. Anthony Barr is a pass rusher. They've had some 3 defensive lineman sets where it'll be almost like a 3-3-5. It's interesting to watch all the different combinations now that Zimmer has had so many of these defensive starters around for so long, and now he's starting to tinker with it and go, okay, well, we can have this chess piece move over here, that one over here, and it's not going to really affect the integrity of the defense. It's not going to be too much mentally for the guys to handle. So I'm curious to see how much he employs this sort of thing during the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting year to watch him operate, especially after watching the defense collapse in the playoffs. How much does he adapt? I almost feel like he needs to be a more aggressive coach this year around, and it'll be interesting to see if he actually carries through with that. New punter. I didn't really, I would have voted for cutting Quigley, but I didn't really expect them to. What was your reaction to this?
No, I didn't expect it either, despite the one thing that surprised me a little bit was after the preseason, the third preseason game, Mike Prefer came out and basically kind of called out Quigley and called out the special teams coverage. And, when he was asked about the coverage, he did say, well, some of those are on our punter too, some of the punt returns that they had against them in the preseason. And so you kind of said, whoa, okay. So Prefer's, a little bit more upfront in criticizing his players than he usually is. And, when that's the case, I think he's feeling the heat a little bit, and Quigley, just quite simply didn't have a very good preseason. And I would argue that, his average wasn't that great, but even what it was, a lot of that was pretty fortunate. Like he had a number of short punts that I think because it was an inexperienced punt returner, a guy who was probably not going to be a punt returner in the league, wasn't sure what to do, let it bounce, and he got 15, 20 yards of roll out of it. And that's not going to happen when you have your top line punt returners in the league making sure-handed plays or sharp mental plays and fielding punts that are that short. So I was surprised that they were as aggressive as they were making this move and going to Matt Weil or Wiley. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I don't blame them for doing it, because what Quigley was giving them wasn't really what they needed.
If you'd like to advertise with this program or anywhere on the talknorth.com podcast network, we have a lot of shows covering a lot of different topics, including business. And some of our newer shows you can get in very cheaply. We just want to cover costs as we develop some new shows. You can email me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. Thanks to all of our current sponsors. It's going to be a very fun season, I believe. Adrian Peterson is complaining. This is not necessarily news, but let's talk about it anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you I didn't really get the whole comments that Chris Carter and Shannon Sharp made, but Adrian really shot back hard at them. Basically they kind of called him out, saying, I think this is essentially what they said is, it's time for him to hang it up.
Yep.
And Peterson came out in USA Today and said, I'll just quote it here: "Watching some of the things they said about me, man, it really hurts me to the core. Not only are they black men, but these are people I look up to. And these are people that made mistakes, especially Chris Carter. So some of the things that came out of his mouth, not only personally, but about me as a player, he's washed up in this, that, and the other, and he should have just retired. How dare you? I thought it was, it was aggressive of Peterson to go after Carter like that. But I'll give Carter credit here too. He also admitted he should have hung it up instead of playing his final year in Miami, which I think was pretty obvious to the outside observers. Peterson just has this attitude of he's always going to try to prove the doubters wrong. He never wants to hear he can't do something. Well, he's getting close to that point where he can't do what he wants to do. So I'm going to be very intrigued with how his season goes this year, especially if he's getting a large role, which I think he probably will to start the season anyway.
First of all, Chris Carter was absolutely right, and it's Chris Carter's job these days to be honest about his fellow athletes, and he was doing that. He was doing exactly his job, and he was right. But even if it was wrong, it's his job to be blunt about what he really thinks. And here's the other thing. Have we ever heard an athlete say, you know what? The doubters were right. Nobody ever says, oh, yeah, you're right. Guess what? People doubted me, and they were absolutely right. That's why I'm now an insurance salesman. Sorry, Tony. That wasn't a shot at insurance salesmen. Nobody, it's athletes, I get it. Athletes and coaches always looking for negative to motivate because negative does motivate, but nobody ever admits when you're right about them.
Yeah, and eventually the doubters are right. The ones that are going to keep saying he's washed up this year. If he's not completely washed up this year, they'll say the same thing next year if he still has an opportunity in the league. I do think, though, that this is it. I can't see him being a guy that, is going to rush for 500 yards this season. I don't know. I don't know where the right over-under is. It's all going to depend on the amount of opportunities that he gets. But, his body has taken a beating, and he's been doing it since 2007. And eventually it's just going to completely shut down on the football field. And this could be the year. And I don't blame Chris Carter for saying what he did. We've grown to respect Carter for his blunt honesty. And I agree with you in this case. I think he's right. I think it's just a matter of Adrian Peterson being mentally unwilling to accept that age catches up with everyone at some point.
Let's finish up with Teddy Bridgewater. Once again, let me thank our sponsors. Again, next live show, 4 o'clock on Friday at Mississippi Pub in Inver Grove Heights. GPS it. Whizkids.tech, WHIZKIDS.tech, twillmn.com. That's Scott Dayton's clothing store in the Dining Galleria, fixologyrepair.com, and Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin. Thanks to all of our listeners and all of our sponsors for making the show possible. Teddy gets traded, and I think this is a great deal for everybody.
Do you? I don't think it's a great deal for Teddy. I think that unless the Saints know that this is Drew Brees' last year, I think Drew Brees could play for 3-4 more years if he wanted to. It's a great opportunity for him to learn behind an accomplished quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. But if he's got to sit here and wait for 2 or 3 years, I realize this is a 1-year deal right now, but I don't see beyond the learning from a Hall of Famer, I don't see the big upside for Teddy Bridgewater with the Saints.
I guess I see him as a potential successor to Brees. And God, how old is Brees now? He's about 39,
38 somewhere. Yeah.
I think, he's 38 or 39. I don't know how much longer he can play. It's nice to think he can play another 3 years. I can see them getting Bridgewater in there, realizing how smart and studious he is, seeing him perform well in practice, and even if he doesn't make the field this year, them saying, okay, this is the successor to Brees, and locking him up, because Brees hasn't had any good backups, and he hasn't really needed good backups. He's getting to the point of his career that he needs a good backup.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. But from my perspective, I look at it and I go, where could have Teddy gone where he would have had a chance to really compete for a starting job? And it may be too late in the process this season for that to happen. I honestly felt like he probably deserved the opportunity to start in New York. Now,
I agree.
Sam Darnold is obviously going to be the future of that team. So I get why they would move on from Teddy, but I just think it's unfortunate because I think he kind of earned the right to be the starter there, and circumstances with Sam Darnold there didn't allow it. Now, I don't know where else he could have gone that he would have been the starter, but I don't really get it from the Saints' perspective of, I just don't think Drew Brees is ready to retire. So if that's the assumption that, after this year he's going to play 2 more years, it's not a great situation for Teddy to, be stuck behind him. He'll have an opportunity to hit free agency again next year, but even if he wants to stick with the Saints, with Brees' contract, they're not going to be able to offer him anything better probably than the 1 year, $6 million deal he's got going this year. So I felt like Teddy left a situation that was better for his immediate future to go to the Saints, where there's just kind of this, where he's stuck in limbo, I guess.
Yeah, well, you and I disagree, and that's what makes this show so controversial, Tim, is we're always just screaming at each other.
Super controversial.
Absolutely. He's Tim Yotter. Check out vikingupdate.com. I'm Jim Souhan. You can always find my stuff in the Star Tribune. We appreciate everybody who sponsors the program and listens to the program. We'll see you 4 o'clock on Friday at Mississippi Pub.